Welcome to Our Montana. I'm Mike Penfold, the Program Director. And Our Montana is working with a coalition that's trying to improve recreation along the Yellowstone River on the lower part of the river. You know, Yellowstone Park is crowded with people, and most people who go to Yellowstone go right by these wonderful little communities we have along the lower Yellowstone River. Few really recognize the recreation opportunities that abide right there. But we do need infrastructure down there. We do need to make some investments. And I think that the communities along that lower Yellowstone are fully supportive of what we're trying to get done there. Christine Whitlatch and Brenda Moss are working with us and their organizations to get this work done. We've got a really good effort, and I want you to hear more about it. And here's a conversation between Christine and Brenda.
You know, I'm here with my friend Brenda Moss, the Marketing Director of Visit Southeast Montana, and we're going to have a discussion today to share with you on the Lower Yellowstone River Corridor Coalition and the project we've been working on since the spring. To just remind Brenda where we started before she became a spokesperson, we had a coalition of folks reaching out to all the communities along Southeast Montana's Lower Yellowstone Corridor from Hysham all the way to Fairview. And at the end of May, we visited with all these communities and got a lot of feedback about what they would want to see in connectivity, economic development, infrastructure, updated maintenance, and investment to link the gaps that we have on the river and provide better portage trails around diversions and really have more accessibility for their communities, their citizens, and the visitors to Southeast Montana. So one of the great things we got to participate in at the end of August, after we'd gathered all this community support of citizens and local elected leadership and economic development and all these supporting tourism organizations, was the governor met all of us spokespeople that were available on the historic Bell Street Bridge in Glendive the end of August. And we had a conversation about this project, and at the end he announced the $4 million to be put into the state budget, to ask officially that Fish, Wildlife and Parks put into the state budget. And so that we needed that to happen for that to go through the appropriate legislative financial appropriations process, and we're so excited what that could mean. It seems right now that we have great bipartisan support, and this is you know, not about this project. Everybody is coming together based on their excitement and their love for their communities and connections to their neighbors. So that's really an exciting thing. But that event was extraordinary. You spoke, Beth Epley from Eastern Plains Economic Development Corporation spoke, the mayor of Glendive spoke, Jerry Jemison, and the governor, and it was just so cool to see our supporting partners from Hysham all the way to Sydney join us on the bridge in Glendive over the river and really kick this off in a much more substantial way when we look at what we need to get that infrastructure investment. I know that you are a really avid outdoor hiker, biker, river rat almost in your family DNA. So tell me, Brenda, what you treasure so much about the Yellowstone in this part of Montana.
Well, that's a great question, Christine. So I'm not originally from Montana, but I know that when I moved here about 17 or 18 years ago, the word Yellowstone, of course, is known across the globe as our first national park, but it's so much more than that. And where I am right now, I get to cross the Yellowstone River every single day on my way to and from work. I see this amazing beauty. It's not uncommon for me to see bald eagles, a lot of different wildlife, pelicans. I mean, it's not just birds. I mean, the riparian areas of the Yellowstone River, from its confluence, you know, where it starts in the national park all the way to the confluence, are so important to this area. But it creates its own environment that we can all enjoy in so many different ways. Like you said, I like to hike and bike and raft and canoe. These opportunities are all the way up and down this river, and it changes too, because if you go west of Billings, you have an area that, you know, more trout fishing, and it really changes in the Laurel and Yellowstone County, and as it goes to the east, it becomes more of a warm water fishery. So that's different. You have your saugers, you know, maybe some walleyes, those types of fish, catfish. So it's different. I think the part of the Yellowstone that to me is most amazing, it's the longest undammed river in the lower 48 states, and it really ties all of these communities together. As you travel from Yellowstone National Park to the confluence, these communities, that's that one thread that is continuous through all of them. So I think that that's very unique. If you talk to someone from another state and you say, you know, I go across the Yellowstone River every day, they're like, wow, they're just fascinated with that. There's just this mystique that happens with the word Yellowstone, and the river itself is pretty amazing.
It really is. And we have this beauty and this different topography and landscape as we get east of Billings that is just getting discovered by the visitor, and really even still discovered by some of our citizens in their own backyard. And really this conversation has excited these communities. What do you see as your role for Director of Marketing for Visit Southeast Montana and our tourism region as the benefit of seeing, you know, more promotion, more infrastructure, more investment along this corridor?
That's a really good question. From the 10,000 foot level, obviously you can look at Southeast Montana as a region and say what it doesn't have. It doesn't have Yellowstone National Park or Glacier National Park, but the better question is, what does it have? And one of the most important pieces of this region is the river. And so what do people like to do on the river? They like to hike along it, they like to camp along it, they like to bike along it, they like to float on it and canoe it and kayak it. And so in terms of what the role of Visit Southeast Montana is, we do something, we're getting involved with something called destination development. So that basically, take that phrase apart, and we're developing a destination as a region. And not destination as in hordes of people are going to come here, but to, number one, create awareness of it, but before you even create the awareness, create the access to it, or the, you know, the slight improvements that need to be made in order for people to find it attractive or accessible. And the role of Visit Southeast Montana is marketing and awareness, both for our residents and the non-resident visitors. But in order to do that, we need to have a little bit more of that infrastructure so that folks can have a great experience while they're here. And it's not just insider information, because that's so much of what Southeast Montana is, all of Eastern Montana, which is what makes it unique. But at the same time, how do we keep that and still allow that visitation to come into these communities?
Absolutely. Well, and one of the untapped assets and secrets along all these communities is how open and hospitable they are. When a new visitor comes to their community, if they just step into a local business, or they step into a restaurant or even a bar or a little hotel, they're welcomed, and they learn about the local history, and if they engage with the local residents. We have something really unique here that I think our communities, from our community conversations, are really excited to build connectivity in this project with one another and not have to compete against each other for grants and all of that. And they're really excited to find ways to have the river connect them in a more direct way. And so that's been really exciting to see. What are you hearing from your community partners about this project as you've been out in the region?
I have, on the Visit Southeast Montana board, we allow for representation of all the 13 counties and the Crow and Northern Cheyenne Indian reservations. And the folks that we are serving on our board definitely want to look at this project and all of the projects that would enhance what is already here in Southeast Montana. So take the Glendive community, for example. I know that there are different entities in that community that have signed on to this project, but also that have, before the project even, the coalition even existed, there's an organization called Makoshika Fitness, or excuse me, Makoshika Wellness.
Yes.
And they recently hosted a mini triathlon, and the river is part of that. They ran, they biked, and they kayaked or canoed. And they had their first year during COVID. because you can socially distance while you do all of this. They had 40 or 45 participants. That's amazing, and they really didn't advertise it. So we know just from these small, I don't want to say isolated, but individual activities and experiences, that the river is part of their life. They want other people to have that same enjoyment, but they also realize that it's an opportunity. Oh, hello, friend of mine. They also realize that it's an opportunity to have visitors come into their community. And when visitors come to their community, they spend time in their businesses, in their bars, restaurants, coffee shops, lodging facilities, and as you said, get to know the people. And really, the people along the river, the people of Southeast Montana are the heart and soul, really, of this project. First of all, our state parks, including Makoshika, are breaking records this year, and they have been since March. So I believe that they are going to hit 100,000 visitors in Makoshika State Park in Glendive. That's a record. Their campground is full every night. We also know from an organization, a national organization called Destination Analysts, that visitors, I'm going to back up. They do a visitors survey. They survey the sentiments of travelers every week, and they're a very well established organization. And we know through this COVID, and we've been watching that data come in, and that data says people are willing to travel. They want to travel because, you know, we're tired of staying home, and we're used to that freedom in our country, in our world. And on top of that, they know that when they do travel, they want to A, travel safely, B, they will travel to visit family and or to visit small towns and have outdoor recreational experiences. So, okay, so maybe your family's not here, or maybe it is if you're a Montanan, but the small towns and the outdoor experience, that's all within the scope of this project. So that, to me, in addition to what we're seeing in our state parks and just walking out in this area, you know that folks, not just from the state, but also from visiting states, want to come here and experience this great area. And it's an asset for all of us.
So through this region, we have some great assets that the river connects. Of course, the anglers, the paddlefish is a big project, and as you get towards the confluence of the Yellowstone and the Missouri into, you know, far east Montana and North Dakota. But I know Visit Southeast Montana is working on some very cool niche projects that actually can have some super wonderful connection to the river. Tell me a little bit about those.
I'm glad you asked that. There's a project that kind of started before COVID. It's been a little bit on hold as we're going through this throughout the messaging we have to put out, because we do want to share safety messaging more than anything. And that message, if you let me do my little infomercial here, is number one, know before you go. So before you go someplace, you know, call ahead and understand what's there. Stay home if you're sick, of course, this is a given. And number three is know that some services would be limited. And a good example of that would be the Little Bighorn Battlefield is open for visitation. The Visitor Information Center is not open.
Right.
So, and we're doing our best to share that information out there. But in terms of other projects, one of the most exciting projects that I feel coming on the scope of, you know, right around the corner is what we call astrotourism. And astrotourism is basically looking at your area and understanding that, or using your assets to attract people who are interested in night skies. Well, this kind of came about with when I was doing what's called a SWOT analysis, looking at strengths and weaknesses and that of the region. Well, one of the weaknesses is the distance from point A to point B. But I thought, how do you take that weakness and turn it into a strength? Well, what does that give us? Well, that gives us amazing space, which we all want, but it also gives us, oh, there's amazing sunrises and sunsets. Take that another step. There's amazing dark skies. I have a neighbor who has traveled to all the continents except Antarctica to see an eclipse.
Oh, wow.
So they travel around the globe. There are tons of people that do this. There's an organization called the International Dark Skies Association, and they have different levels of certification. We are currently working to have Medicine Rock State Park and Brush Lake State Park in the far northeastern side of Montana to be certified, or I'm sorry, designated as a international dark sky location. And what that means is then we have the support. We've also met the parameters of that organization, which are pretty stringent in a sense, but it has to do with the kind of light and that sort of thing. Take that back to the river. And maybe you're at Pompey's Pillar, or maybe you're in the area, you decided to float the river, there's a campsite, and you can be out on this campsite or this island, and you camp out there, and there's no light anywhere.
Right.
Can you imagine what you're seeing?
Yes.
And so with the astrotourism project that Visit Southeast Montana is doing in conjunction with Missouri River Country and Central Montana and the state of Montana, we can really tie in the Lower Yellowstone Coalition project, because those are the two things that they absolutely have. And so again, that experience, whether you're a resident of the state and you're just recreating here in your own backyard or across the state, or you're visiting, these are things that you can get other places.
The other things that I've heard a lot of excitement about in the communities that I know is also part of the niche work that you're doing is the historic piece with the Lewis and Clark Corps of Discovery, with those that are really interested in birds. So Brenda, you talked about astrotourism, and let's talk a little about the economics along the river. You know, we know that we need to work in partnership with agriculture, you know, all the different ways that our beet farmers, our corn growers, our cattle, you know, producers all along the river is dependent and excited about what the river provides them in their life, and they're such good stewards of our land. One of the things about our solutions that I think excites me is if we can get enough access that's predictable, we can hopefully mitigate some of the impact on private land. So when people are on the river more than one day and they connect from community to community, we can provide that in a more predictable way that we can monitor and maintain and manage in some format that's better for all the stakeholders. But I know that the river is part of this economic lifeblood beyond my childhood of agriculture experience, and is really important to what we can develop for the community.
The river really is the thread that draws all these communities together. So if you can envision an opportunity for a family or a group to put in with their canoes and kayaks and camping gear, just say, you know, maybe just east of Billings, or even the Pompey's Pillars, let's just say, put in there, and take a multi-day trip down the river. Well, there's only so much space for them, just as we know from other places that people canoe or raft. Fort Smith, the Smith River. Fort Smith is in southeast Montana. The Smith River is not. But it's important to understand that when families do this, or folks do this, that they're going to need to and want to go into these communities to resupply, to maybe, you know, spend a day in that community and spend a night in a hotel and explore what's going on in that community and meet some of the locals, have a shower, that sort of thing. You know?
Right.
Showers are nice.
Showers are good.
Yeah. So we also know from the University of Montana's Institute for Tourism and Recreation Research that domestic travelers spend on average $152 a day when they're visiting Montana, with an average daily average trip of 4.5 days, and that's an average. Then comes up with my new math that I have, $684 per trip.
Wow.
And you know, while that might not sound like a lot of money, if the influx of that to small communities, say Forsyth or say Hysham, that's an amazing amount of money. So it's all in proportion to the size of the communities.
Right.
And you know, a smaller community, maybe not as many people will stop there. A bigger community, maybe more people will stop there or stay longer. So Miles City, they might stay 2 days. Or they might put in Miles City and buy all of their supplies there, and then make their way down to Glendive. And so it's all in proportion to the size of these communities, but this is also something that can happen simultaneously along the river with our #1 economic driver of agriculture, and tourism is the second economic driver in the state. So really they don't have to be separate or working against each other. They can really be working in conjunction and be simultaneous, using the same resource, because really we're taking nothing away, but we're enhancing what we have.
Well, and I know in the change in our energy sector, so many of these communities, as we get Laurel East, we're so dependent on the transport of coal, for example, from Colstrip through Forsyth and to Glendive. And so that economic makeup is changing. And these communities know that they need to connect in this broader picture to keep their communities vibrant. And there's some real opportunities here. And it's really exciting to see if we could connect. I know the little town of Terry, when you talk about these little hidden voices that share information, they're known for people that get on the river for more than one day, that they can call into their little historic Kimpton hotel, and they'll come pick them up out at their Milwaukee Bridge and bring them to town. And I hear they often stay 2 days because they just have fun. You know, there's history, there's, you know, museums in all these little towns. There's, you know, just great little places for them to enjoy what they're doing. And they also, these travelers on the river come generally with traveling family or friends in cars that come around them, and they tell so much more about everything going on in the region. So economically, this connectivity of the river is exciting. So we have this quality of life and this opportunity to invite new members to our community, and this outdoor lifestyle and what we have to offer is such a great draw for our communities.
It certainly is, and I will tell you that when I said I moved here 17, 18 years ago, that was a big part of it, is that outdoor opportunity. Particularly my husband's my husband and sons are hunters and anglers, and you know, to me, again, we're back to, you mentioned Terry, we're at the heart of the communities are the people. And the folks of Terry, for example, they are exactly what they are. And as you mentioned, you know, they can call the Kimpton and get a ride to the hotel. They can see the sign on the door at the museum and call, and 10 minutes later somebody's there.
Yes.
That is the people of Eastern Montana. That is the epitome of what makes this region. And you know, I think that, you know, maybe a naysayer would look at this and say, well, you know, we don't want those folks here, that sort of thing. I think that there's a, you know, turn that the other way around, flip it on its head and say, we understand that change is happening. Okay, change is happening. We know this. However, we can have a proactive role in what this change looks like for our community, for our region, and looking at the river project is an opportunity to do that. Instead of saying no, 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 stay out, say this is what we envision in the future. This is what we want it to look like, and working together. You know, the River Coalition, the Visit Southeast Montana, all the economic development organizations in the region, the city. It's like the perfect opportunity for all of us to work together with a cohesiveness, using a resource that's here that we all know and love to diversify this economic portfolio of these communities. And it doesn't have to be a big diversification.
You're right, those little things consistently make such a big difference. You know, you look at all the uniqueness from Pompey's Pillar and all the history, you know, the museum in Hysham, you know, everything about the museums and art galleries in Miles City, and the great history in Forsyth, and they have access to the river right on the edge of town. I mean, you can walk literally the 6 blocks and be downtown. It's pretty cool. You look at the Frontier, you know, Gateway Museum in Glendive and the great Makoshika State Park. You look at the Calypso. I mean, you can see the beauty of all that BLM land and the Calypso Trail from the river in a way that you can't see it on foot. And the Mondack Center in Terry, and everything that happens at the border for Fairview, where they connect us into that history of Fort Owen in North Dakota, but all the parking and everything's in the Fairview community. There's just all this exciting history and all these great little things about the community, and it's so awesome to hear you talk about, you know, all this connectivity, and it's so much more than just let's put some people on the river. You know, you spoke in late August August at an event in Glendive, and I want to thank you for that. I want to kind of tell everybody where we're going and what happens next. We've been really fortunate that all local governments, from city to county to economic development folks, to Walleye's chapter of Miles City, to the Catfish Association, and all these other organizations, including yours, have signed on as community partners. And with all that community citizen grassroots support, we've been able to get the governor to come, because one of the things to get investment is it has to go through the appropriations legislative process. So $4 million has been put into the budget, and we will move forward with that. And so we're going to ask all of our partners, yourself and all the citizens that have been reaching out and saying we're so excited and we support this, to maybe be contacting their legislators when we get to that point. It looks like we have great bipartisan support of our legislators through the region, and hopefully we'll be able to match this money with federal dollars, whether it be Pitts and Robinson or the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So $4 million easily becomes, at that point, if it goes through appropriations as we anticipate it should, to $8 million or more. That's such investment for a region that's been quietly off the map and such a large chunk of Montana. So it's so exciting. So I want to invite everybody to visit more about what Brenda is as a spokesperson, all our other spokesperson, at our website, which is theloweryellowstoneriver.com, and you'll see our solution there. And I know you've been involved in giving feedback for that solution, which is the 3 areas. Where do we have really maintenance needs that we've not been able to financially meet, that need to get met in current access? Where do we have these large gaps in the river that might be 30 to 50 miles where we need to provide more access for people to safely use the river? And where do we need portage trails to safely be good partners with that important economic driver of agriculture that runs and uses the river? And we want to make sure that we're working in partnership with them as such an important community stakeholder all along the river. And so I just really thank you for all your efforts and all of your willing to speak out and support us publicly. And I know that you'll be great help as we move forward to the session. And again, I want to invite everybody to go to theloweryellowstoneriver.com, learn more. You can sign up, email us, and stay connected and get involved.
I'm Mayor Jerry Jimison here in Glendive, Montana. This isn't the Glendive project. This is an Eastern Montana project.
We've identified 3 key areas we need to address to improve the public access along the Lower Yellowstone corridor. First, the current infrastructure that exists, there are a number of areas that need to be better maintained, monitored, and developed. Second, we have huge gaps along the river where we need access points so that we can safely get in and out of the river and use the river all along the whole corridor. And finally, we need really adequate portage trails so we can safely get out where there's the diversions and get back in the river and continue our journey.
Improving river access, public facilities, recreation infrastructure is one thing that we can act on today that makes long-term economic impacts into the future. I've asked FWP to identify $4 million of general licensing funding to be applied to the Coalition's project, which when then matched with other state and federal proceeds, that could double up to about $8 million.
The secret's out about Eastern Montana, and the hope is we'll have the ability with this new infrastructure to have more citizens enjoy our quality of life and more visitors enjoy our hospitality.